Howdy. So in case you missed it in the Anakin video, bit of a different format today. I'm recreating the studio that I've been recording in for however long, because it's going to be my son's bedroom. I've got a little baby girl coming in a couple of weeks, and so this will be my little boy's bedroom. He's 2 years old. It's his first ever bedroom, which means I get no YouTube studio anymore, so it's going to be all green screen after this. Anyway, let's get on with this, because I know it's a very controversial title there. Here's why I have a problem with race-swapping characters, whether they're wizards or elves or anything else, or making Klingons gay, or putting women in male characters. Here's the reason. It's not what you're thinking, and it's actually not only far less racist than you might think, it might actually expose there's racism that you didn't even see. Let's get to it. So uniformity is not equality, and uniformity is not required for equality. In fact, equality is saying we can be just as good as each other even if we're different. Uniformity is saying we have to be the same, which typically means you have to do and think as I say. Uniformity usually means we all have to be the same, which means you have to be like me. That's what they're always saying. Diversity is where we can actually be different and be okay about it. And what you're seeing in race swapping is the opposite of that. Let me explain. So forget about black wizards or black elves. Let's go right the way back to a black princess in the BBC TV show Merlin. This is where I first started noticing this. So you had Guinevere was a black woman, okay, and obviously therefore her dad is also black. He is a smith. He works in metal. Now, it wasn't specific metals, he was general metals, which would mean that he's a blacksmith. I don't know if they were doing that on purpose, but this is a black character playing a blacksmith. Anyway, I don't know if the algorithm's going to get me for saying black so many times in one video, but I don't know. It certainly doesn't like my copyright infringements. So you might say, what's wrong with that, John? Why can't a princess be black? Well, I've got no particular reason to say so. However, if you think that people in 7th century England would have just gone, whatever, if they would have had the same response that you would have, being as enlightened as you are, in the 7th century, to a black woman taking the throne, or even to a black businessman working in the same town as white people, and no one having any problem with that, then I got to ask you a question. What was the civil rights movement for then? Why was it necessary? Why did Martin Luther King have to have a dream? Why did so many people have to march? Why did so many people have to die? I guess none of it was necessary because everyone was just fine with black people living in England, right? And that's the problem. When you try to insert someone into someone else's history, you erase that person's history. The point is that black people have a history of their own, and that history matters. It's important. It's part of their character. It's part of what they went through. It needs to be respected and not written over. And that's the thing. It's not that I'm worried that, oh no, they're taking roles away from white people. We've got plenty of roles and we can always create more. I don't really care about that. My problem is when you shoehorn someone into someone else's story, they lose their own story. So why do I have a problem with black elves? Well, I don't per se, and it's not even the fact that in the Peter Jackson films, in Lord of the Rings that's shown later, there's not a single black elf on Earth, even though this is set later. That point has been raised before. I'm not really bothered about that either. Tolkien was writing, as everyone keeps saying, a North European myth. But he was actually writing the story of Earth. People don't tend to get that bit. Arda, the world in which Middle-earth is a continent, that's actually supposed to be Earth, but very, very long ago. And so the stories that we're seeing are the stories that ancient Britons would have told about the beginnings of the world. That's what it's supposed to be. So this is Earth. So Middle-earth is literally Europe. Not figuratively, it's supposed to actually be the way ancient Britons would have seen Europe in this fictional mythic system that Tolkien had created. So he's saying that black people have been living in Europe? Well, actually, yes, the history, we don't actually know how far back it goes. But that's not to say that everyone in Europe would have been okay with that, because again, if that's the case, why on earth do we have the history that we have? And that history means an awful lot more to black people than it does to white people, because we didn't suffer through it quite so much. We didn't suffer from the same things. We don't have the same stories. So let's not try to put our stories into their mouths and force them to tell our stories from our perspective and not from their own. I just realised you can't actually see what I'm doing there. So let me just tilt down, assuming you're actually watching it at all. Anyway, lovely shot of my crotch there, and away we go. It's much the same, and I've mentioned this before, of making the Doctor a woman, which they didn't do. They kept the character basically the same and just put a female actor in there. And my issue with that is, well, first of all, ladies, I've done this in a video before. Are you happy with hand-me-downs? Are you happy with the best that you can get being a role that was made good by someone else? Let me explain why it doesn't work. So, assuming there are any ladies watching, just imagine this, because this is something you'll get more than anyone else. If you've seen this bit before, just skip past it, it's fine. Imagine, ladies, you have lived your entire life as a man. You have known nothing but male physiology for hundreds and hundreds of years, unless we actually take the Timeless Child as canon and From My Cold Dead Fingers. But you've been reborn into a female body for the first time. You have no memory, no knowledge of being in a female body whatsoever. You are in male clothes. You are in male underwear. You are a fully grown and developed adult woman, and you immediately have to start running. Now then, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it ouch? Of course it is. You don't get that in Doctor Who, because this is a part played by a man, a male character, being written by a man. There are sensibilities that women get that men just don't. You see, women have a different story to men. So when you try to put a female character in a male story, it doesn't work. And I'm not talking about the usual moaning about, oh, well, a woman couldn't beat up a man, which for the most part is the case. I'm not talking about the fact that this is a disservice to men and taking part of our story. What I'm saying is this takes away the female story. This takes away the challenges that women actually go through. When we cite a woman who can, just because she's had a bit of kung fu training, she can beat up 50 henchmen in a row, who we can assume have also had some kind of kung fu training, what we're saying is not just, okay, that's unrealistic, women can't do that. We're overriding the fact that women feel an awful lot more fear than men do. We've just decided that that doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't really work, does it? There is no good angle where I can actually see myself doing this stuff, so let me just put that there. Boom, change of angle. So why am I saying any of this? Well, because firstly it's true, but also we're creating something that I'm hoping fixes this problem entirely, and I need your help. You can actually be part of the change to stop this kind of nonsense from happening, to bring actual equality, which would be something you would really, really love. It's completely different to what you've seen so far. Let me explain.
My name is Lillian Wilson, and in 12 days, like most of the human race, I'll be dead.
We're creating a new science fiction universe. It's called Ex Uno, and it's not just a YouTube channel. This is actually a sci-fi cinematic universe that is already underway, and it needs new creators, new contributors, and you can be one of them. And in doing so, you're actually fixing the problem that I'm talking about. Let me explain. So let's just say the first chapter here is called The Legacy Files, and this is a story about a bunch of people who have just found out that the world is ending. Some people are going to be rescued, however, they've already left. They've already left the planet. So if you're on the ground, you've been left behind. So this is a story of a bunch of people who have just found out that they are going to die and there's nothing they can do about it. Now then, I wanted to tell the story from a lot of different perspectives. I wanted to tell the story of someone in the UK, someone in India, someone in Africa, someone in China. And so what I did was I hired a Chinese actor. I hired, well, she was actually Malaysian, but she did a flawless Mandarin. And I hired an Indian actor who was actually a COVID nurse, and we shot it during COVID. I hired not just an African actor, but an entire African crew. It was a second unit. We shot it, or they shot it, in Ghana. I wasn't there. So I sent over instructions of what the story was going to be, but then I let the director put his own voice and his own flavour on it. And there you go. Now we have a diverse film, not just featuring different actors of different colours playing the same role, but playing different characters in different situations that I'm hoping are more authentic to who they actually are and what it's actually like living there. Now then, that's just the start of it. Because you see, all of those parts were written by me. I'm a white Brit. What do I know about these things? But the story, dear viewer, is for there to be millions of these legacy files, millions of these records of people recording their last thoughts, telling the story of who they are and what their life is, which will be recorded for the ages, so that the descendants of the escapees will actually know this is what really happened. So I'm looking for people to tell individual stories. This is my life, this is who I was, but I want you to tell it from your own perspective, wherever you are in the world. Why is a white British guy writing the part of a black African, or someone in China or Afghanistan or Palestine? Why would I write their stories? I only wrote these ones to kick the project off. The point is, whoever you are, you understand people like you better than anyone. I'm looking for you to write the part of someone like you, so that I'm not trying to put my voice into your mouth. If you're an actor, I want you to comment below to say that you want to get on board. If you want to have a go at writing, comment below to say that you want to get on board. If you want to create something that does things differently, instead of a small writer's room trying to represent every race and every gender, which ends up homogenizing them and turning us all into the same thing with one history, completely blotting out the individual histories that people have had. If you want to do something better and show Hollywood, show the industry how this could be done, then get in touch now. Comment below, get on the socials, get on the website. There's a sign up list for the newsletter there. We're doing this. We're creating this. There are going to be thousands, maybe millions of short films that all fit within the same universe, that tell perspectives on the same event from the most diverse range of voices possible. But it will be authentic. It will be the actual voices of different people, not just the imagined voices of different people that all end up looking and sounding the same. There is a better way of reaching equality than race swapping and gender swapping. This is a massive cinematic narrative where it spans hundreds of years. There are so many events in this that I want to catch all kinds of different perspectives in all kinds of different ways. So this will be, I'm calling it a distributed narrative, where there are lots and lots and lots of different storytellers all working towards the same goal. This is a revolution, people. This is an actual revolution. And if we get this right, this could actually change the course of the entertainment industry for years, decades to come. I want you on board. It's a crazy idea. It's a wild idea, but what if it works? Anyway, that's it from me for now. I'm going to finish building this bed. More to come. See you next time, and thank you for listening.